Chris,
Heath, and Samantha.
Thanks, guys.
We need to come up with a better solution.
Well, what do you mean? That was so smooth. It was perfect.
Well-oiled machine right here, podcasting masters. Hey, we're back. We're alive. Just like Tango Gameworks.
I was about to say, and then on the seventh day, God said, let there be more Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, they're back from the dead.
I don't want that.
In a somewhat unprecedented move.
Congratulations to all the people that have jobs again.
Wow, you say that so dismissively.
Well, because there's no shortage of game dev companies that we need resurrected.
And you're saying, like, of all the ones that could have been saved, why this one?
Arcane's just collecting dust.
So just for the uninformed, back in early May, Microsoft made the announcement that they were shuttering several Bethesda-owned studios, including Tango Gameworks, creators of Hi-Fi Rush, and The Evil Within. And just a couple days ago, it was announced in a surprising move that Krafton Inc., a South Korean publisher, is resurrecting them from the grave, saving those jobs, keeping the team together, and even purchased the rights to Hi-Fi Rush so that they can make a sequel. Yeah, highly irregular, just because when most game companies make the difficult decision to shut down a studio, there's usually like a laundry list of justifiable reasons to do so. Either a lot of key talent has left, they've shipped several duds recently, but this goes to show that really wasn't the case with Tango Gameworks. They were at the peak of their success. Hi-Fi Rush was critically beloved. It just goes to show Microsoft was closing them for not very logical reasons.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think Microsoft made a good decision, and this bit's getting more nefarious.
Just the point was, when you're shuttering a studio, usually there wouldn't be interested parties looking to buy it because there's a reason you're closing it down.
Didn't Telltale?
Telltale, as I understand it, was in a death spiral due to the high cost of the licensing fees. All the games Telltale was making were like based on Marvel IPs or Walking Dead licenses.
Which is why they pivoted to Wolf Among Us, because the Three Little Piggies are public domain.
So thank you, Krafton, for giving us more Tango. I will stay tuned.
Will you stay tuned, Sam?
I mean, I guess so. I feel like every time Chris mentions Hi-Fi Rush to me, I have to re-ask him what that game is because I can't, for the life of me, keep it in my brain.
I should probably play it.
That's a good idea.
To be a little more informed.
Yeah.
It's in my Steam library.
Which means it's in my Steam library.
Which means it's in my Steam library.
We're all one big happy family here on Mobius Tubes.
Yeah.
This is episode 108.
Tim Rogers. That's his Twitter handle. It's just 108.
Oh.
Because he was like an early adopter, I think.
Lock it in.
Yeah.
We're recording this episode on August 18th, 2024. How are you guys doing?
Fine.
Damp.
It was a rainy day.
You know what I could really go for is a nice warm fire.
Go on.
And some hot walkie-talkie action.
Oh. The Segway Master Heath back at it again.
So I'm assuming, Heath, you want to talk about my experience playing Firewatch.
What? No, I was just talking about...
But first, I think, Chris, you wanted to touch on...
No. We can't ruin this segue.
Oh, God.
It was gold.
You totally ruined the segue.
So Firewatch, I believe you guys refer to it as a walking simulator, heavily story-driven game. I played it very recently.
And when you booted it up, you immediately switched it to play in 3:4 aspect ratio,
As
correct?
it's meant to be played. Yes, of course I did that.
It's not like I missed anything. Everything you're supposed to pay attention to is in center frame.
I would actually say that if I had tried to play it in 3:4, I would have found the game unplayable. And that's because I really struggled with navigating the environment.
Oh.
I don't have good vision and my sense of direction is really poor. And the way the game marks the trails was not very apparent to me. So I got stuck behind a lot of invisible walls for a lot of my gameplay. I think I looked at the number of hours I played versus Chris. And I was like 2 hours extra from where he was just because I kept getting stuck or lost.
But Chris is an OG gamer. Like, what's the expected value? You're comparing yourself to like
we'll
Michael
come
Jordan.
back to comparing game times when we talk about my other game I've played.
Oh no, this is where she gets me back.
She's a segue queen.
Hey Samantha, what's the premise of what's going on in Firewatch?
So Firewatch starts out, you're a character named Henry who's in his early 20s.
Is he? No.
I'm telling
He's much older.
in the prologue.
Oh, thank Christ. Okay.
Yeah, he's in his early 20s. You make some sort of introduction decisions about his life. It tells you the result of those decisions, one of which is like meeting and marrying the woman who will become his wife. Story fallout happens, a tragic event, and then Henry, who is now in his early 40s, I believe, agrees to go to be at a Firewatch tower where, from my understanding, his job is predominantly to like make sure people aren't committing fire hazards out in the forest and or spot any forest fires that emerge during his time there.
Do you know where it takes place? Is it chock full of arsonists?
Wyoming.
Look at you. How the game plays out is you'll spend time navigating through your area of the forest, going on some very simple quests, all given to you by your sort of supervisor, Delilah. Now, you don't actually really interact with any characters in this game. The only really strong interaction you have is a dialogue with the walkie-talkie you carry around with your supervisor, Delilah. So essentially, the whole story is told through the environment or through this discussion with Delilah, the other major character in the story. And so as it progresses, you learn more about Henry, more about Delilah, and you sort of investigate and uncover the mystery of what's going on in this forest. So that's the premise. In terms of what I think Firewatch is getting at with its story, I'm going to try to say this without saying any spoilers, is I think it has two themes or questions it's asking the player. I think it's really important in the beginning of the game that you're making all the decisions Henry makes that lead him to be in this situation where he's sort of isolated himself from humanity. Throughout the course of the game, you see how other people have made mistakes as well. And I'm saying mistakes, but these are pretty severe errors in judgment where people have gotten like pretty badly hurt because of a character's actions. So I think the first thing Firewatch kind of wants to investigate with its story is what sort of paths people can take to redeem themselves after they've made these mistakes that have hurt people. The second question, I think, is more obvious, which is throughout the game, you never see Delilah. She's only ever available to you via this walkie-talkie.
A disembodied voice.
A disembodied voice. And early game, there are some events that happen, and of course later through the game, that cause you to maybe question your trust in her voice, where maybe she's told you of times where she's made kind of very questionable decisions, or you catch her on something that you're like, wait a minute, is that even true? That doesn't make any sense. It's not adding up. And it's like, how much do we trust this person, Delilah? When I finished the game, I had sort of come to the conclusion that I didn't trust her.
What? But she sounds so hot.
Yeah,
I would jump off a bridge.
I played Henry as morally straight as I could. So if we're getting into more spoiler content, when Delilah like makes romantic advances towards him, I rejected her. And I feel like most people don't do that because they're like, but she's so hot, even though I can't see her.
She's a Wyoming 10. Well,
that means nothing.
That means nothing.
Yeah, she's just a woman.
A shiny pine cone's a Wyoming 10.
Exactly.
Shout out to all the listeners in Wyoming.
All one of them.
Scoring many points with them this episode.
I mean, you just called him a 10.
Why don't you meet me over in Laramie and we'll go see the Cowboys game?
So if we're getting into spoiler stuff, essentially Delilah tells you about the series of errors she's made in her life to result at being at this Firewatch station where she like isolates herself for long periods of time, how she sort of betrayed her fiance, and then to gain the sympathy of her family when he dumps her, she lies about what happens. Those are some pretty morally questionable actions because they're both done strictly with her self-interest in mind. And then, of course, the big climax of the story is that at one point, the person who was at the station before Henry, he had brought his child along with him, even though he wasn't allowed to. Henry finds the dead body of the child because the child hadn't been wearing secure climbing equipment and allegedly fell and died of his injuries there. Which, of course, you could blame the father who put their child in that situation, but of course it's also on Delilah to make sure the people under her control are following the proper safety procedures and not bringing young children into dangerous environments. So, why I say I don't trust Delilah is the end of the game. You're clearing out because there's a big forest fire and everyone needs to get out of there for their own safety.
Wait a minute. There's a fire on the Firewatch?
I know, right? I never even mentioned it. It was so irrelevant to me. Delilah's like, oh, come to my station and the helicopter will come pick you up, right? And during this time, she's debating with herself whether to come clean about the child's dead body. Because if she doesn't say anything, that dead body will probably just decompose and no one will ever know what she did wrong and she can continue to come back to the station. And then when the helicopter comes by to make its first rounds, she's like, oh, Henry is coming. But I'm just going to go ahead and get on now. I'm going to leave now and Henry can get on later. So she deliberately avoids meeting face to face with you. And she sort of said to you that she'll come clean, but there's no way for Henry to ever follow up or check her on that. He's never coming back to the forest. And now he's not even going to be able to confront her face to face. So I think Delilah is doing what she's always done, which is telling the person what they want to hear, and then she's going to continue to act in her own self-interest. And maybe that's not the point of the story, given that Henry does have this sort of redemption within himself of learning that he needs to go back and take care of his ailing wife. But yeah, I didn't find Delilah to be all that sympathetic of a character, and I kind of thought she was a bad person. So what are your guys' opinions on Firewatch? Did you even think that much about it? I had a lot of time staring at invisible walls to contemplate what was going on in the story.
I don't blame her for the death of the thing. You're saying that she ought to have narked on Henry's predecessor.
Yes.
Yeah.
It would be cruel to say that the child's death is entirely her fault, but she certainly could have prevented it.
You're opening my eyes, Samantha. I didn't think even that her early exit was indicative of her escaping culpability again. Because you're right, the fire would destroy the evidence. Well, no, it wouldn't, sorry. But no one would find it to begin with.
Yeah, it seems unlikely someone would find it and then be able to connect the dots of what happened without information from Delilah or Henry, but Henry's not going to be returning.
I'm positive I'll feel different about this when I have a kid. But right now, all I was thinking in the helicopter was like, I'm going to get some of that Delilah. And the helicopter pilot in my game fist bumped me as I thought of it. So Tango Games, bravo. Who made this game?
Campo Santo.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess based on my minuscule Steam playtime, I think I breezed through this game faster than the thoughts were able to form. I don't think it left that deep of an impression
I think
on
if
me.
I could have broadened my view of the game, both physically and figuratively, I might have seen Delilah how Samantha sees her.
I don't know that my view is what Campo Santo intended, because from what I've seen online, the predominant feeling is that people like Delilah and they want to see her and like form a relationship with her. And by the end of it, I was like, I don't hate Delilah, but I certainly don't trust her. And so I don't think I'd be pursuing a relationship with her.
I think that's a nuanced analysis. Sounds more convincing than just succumbing to the flirty voice over the radio.
I mean, she does sound kind of hot.
They always sound hotter than they are, though.
Yeah, she's nailed that radio voice.
Why do you think there isn't a visual component to Mobius tubes?
Rumor is there was once.
Yeah, to the audio listener, I have heterochromia and the chiseled jaw and anything else you can imagine.
Very good. Would you overall endorse the games? Tell people to go play Firewatch?
Yeah, I mean, I would ask the creator to make the environment Like, even if it's just an on-off switch where like I can have like a little quest marker of where I need to go. I get that you're trying not to ruin the immersive experience, but the navigation was so difficult for me that it entirely pulled me out of the game. So therefore, entirely ruining the immersion of the experience. That would be my only complaint. Otherwise, I thought it was a pretty interesting story, and it's a pretty quick game. So yeah, I would recommend it if you haven't played it.
I'll be curious to know once you play more of the walking simulator canon where it falls in your tier list.
Yeah, she's going to be like, all right, never mind.
Okay.
We should be asking ourselves, why Remains of Edith Finch?
All right. On that note, how about we move on to a game Samantha and I finished playing together? It was a long one. We finished up Zero Escape, Virtue's Last Reward. This is the second game in the Zero Escape trilogy. We played 999 beforehand. It's fair to say, Samantha, we loved this game.
Oh, it was fantastic.
I was blown away with how much more it impressed me than the first game in the series.
They certainly took what they had with 999 and absolutely ran with it.
Because I finished 999 years ago, put it down, had a pleasant time, but then was in no rush to continue playing through the series. And now, years later, I realized what a fool I had been. Virtue's Last Reward was peak. So let's get into it a little bit. This will be a spoiler-free discussion.
Do you escape the ship?
No ships this time.
What?
That was the first game. But to quickly sell it to the audience, this is a visual novel-style experience. Most of the time, you're going to be reading dialogue and text, and occasionally trying to solve puzzles to escape a room. Very escape room style. You play as Sigma, one of the 9 people abducted and forced to play this high-stakes game of life and death against their will for the whims of a AI rabbit named Zero.
Zero Junior.
Zero Junior, my bad. Not to be confused with Senior.
Yeah.
And then you're off to the races. This sequel, I think it really raised the stakes. It's much more grander in its scale and ambition, both in terms of its runtime and just the many permutations the story can take. Much like a Telltale game or a David Cage game, this is a branching narrative game where you'll make decisions and those will spiderweb out into a flowchart of various possibilities where the story can lead. I thought it was excellent. It was a joy for me to discover exactly how this game even functions as a sequel to 999. Because initially, the nature of the connections of the plot are very opaque to you. And they certainly take their time revealing the narrative connections to the first game. And that mystery alone was compelling to me. But it's only one of several mysteries this game introduces.
And for all that Chris and I were able to maybe deduce as we were going along, like we were like, oh, based on this information, I bet this person actually has this going on. There is no way you will be able to suss out everything that this game will surprise you with. Even at the very end, there were twists that had us on the floor.
There were layered twists, and in reviewing the evidence, there was sufficient foreshadowing right up until the very last one. Well-executed twists all around.
How many beauty points do you end with?
Oh, erotic units.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, as funny as it was that those were canonically part of the game, they play a very small role.
0 role in the game.
Only when you're doing like a scratch and sniff bikini poster as part of a puzzle.
I say less.
As part of the like greater degree of player input it's asking of you, in the first game, 999, the only really narrative branching that occurred was when you were choosing which characters to team up with for the next puzzle/leg of the journey. That decision still remains in Virtue's Last Reward, with the addition of the AB games, which function as a prisoner's dilemma conundrum competition. The characters you were moments ago solving puzzles with and relying on each other to escape a room with, you're thrust into a life or death, ally or betray situation where if you cooperate, you can accumulate points. 9 points is sufficient for you to escape this facility and find the outside world, where if your point total ever dips below 0, the penalty is death. So those are these stakes. It's your ticket out or even your life is on the line. And you can try to get greedy, earn even extra points by betraying your comrade, but at your own peril. So that's the prisoner's dilemma you're often faced with in the game. I think for most decent players, your gut instinct is to like ally with your buddy who you just solved puzzles with. But I think the scenario writing does a good job of constantly giving you some kind of a reason to be tempted to betray, whether it's casting doubt on the actions of what your partner's going to do, or like tantalizing you with like an extra reward or an incentive, like a deal a character's cut with you to force you to betray, or even in one instance, you're being blackmailed to do betray.
Is there a renegade playthrough of this game?
So in completing the entire game, if you're going through all the routes, you will see the outcome for each branching choice. And it sounds like a lot, and you're like, man, does that get repetitive? It really doesn't. I feel like the game does an excellent job of introducing new content with each new pathway. I think the only exception are maybe some of the bad endings where it's like, well, okay, that was the bad ending. We get it. Let's move on.
The fact that it is a branching narrative is fully capitalized on and fleshed out. It is baked into the premise of the game that you will be going down multiple routes.
Digital even.
They abandoned the digital routes in this game. 0 were calculated.
Which is so sad.
Unbelievable.
It's like, there goes the one factoid I know about the series. It's no longer relevant. No, it's so good. As far as solving the puzzles themselves, Samantha, I think you play the game for the narrative. The puzzles were nothing to write home about.
Okay, you say that, but we had to look up some of them. So, okay, but I'll say that's not because the puzzles were like really tricky for the most part. It was just the solution did not follow a logical path.
Those were the exception and not the rule.
Yeah, most of them are harmless and fine. And you're like, yeah, okay, anyone above the age of 10 could figure this out.
Right. What I'm saying is at no point did we look at each other and gasp when the revelation of a puzzle occurred to us.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say the game does not use, well, with a couple exceptions, does not really use the escape rooms as a vehicle to deliver like plot relevant information.
Right. They're eating your vegetables before you get dessert, which is whatever crazy thing's happening to Sigma next.
But that's not true for all of the puzzle rooms. And then, of course, the puzzle rooms do provide environments for those story moments to happen later on. So they're not entirely functionless.
Sure. As far as comparisons, this game most reminded me of 13 Sentinels.
I was going to say, Zero Escape is the new Vanillaware.
Well, I mean, they came...
Friendship with Vanillaware is over. Now Zero Escape is best friend.
I don't think that's an unreasonable assertion to make. It reminded me of 13 Sentinels, the game Heath and I played a few years back, most in that it introduces a lot of these seemingly disparate sci-fi plot points about, Ice 9, a pandemic, something about this special eclipse, all these seemingly unrelated sci-fi premises, and then...
a talking cat.
Right, all these cat puns. And then as you get deeper and deeper into the game, it's a lot of fun seeing how all the puzzle pieces connect, and suddenly all these random elements are related, and it coalesces into a coherent plot. That was very cool. We already said the twists are well done. Where it differed from 13 Sentinels was I felt this game actually stuck the landing wholeheartedly. I thought the entire game was coherent up until the end. Despite last episode, you can hear me saying I had doubts it was going to be able to bring it all together, but it did.
Yeah, they took their time to do it right, I feel, and they did a good job. I was going to compare it to Spike Chunsoft's other big franchise, the Danganronpa series, because Danganronpa is not like a choice-based adventure. Like there's one story path and you're going to go down it no matter what you do. But I feel like the scope of the plot of Virtue's Last Reward was on par, if not better, than the first entry in the Danganronpa series in terms of what they were doing in terms of world building and developing the characters and their relationships with one another. And I think that's a pretty big compliment because Danganronpa is a very popular series, and I definitely hadn't heard of the Zero Escape trilogy.
They do often get mentioned in the same breath.
Okay.
That's how I got turned on to it. But no, Virtue's Last Reward far exceeded my expectations. We will be checking out the third game sooner rather than later.
Zero Time Dilemma.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I would count, if I was tabulating my top 25 video game stories, I think Virtue's Last Reward would be in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Also, the characters were really great for the most part.
Sometimes you love them and sometimes you hate them.
But like if you hate them, most of the time you're supposed to hate them.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe we just hate them for unrelated reasons.
So yeah, big endorsement of checking out Virtue's Last Reward. I would not recommend diving in without first playing 999. As a duology, I think they function excellently together.
And 999's very short in comparison to Virtue's Last Reward. So
yeah, this was like double the length.
Yeah. And 999 is still pretty good. So it's not like you're eating your vegetables, as you said.
Right. Heath, any questions in closing?
I'm just trying to think of the rest of your top 25 best video game stories.
Surely all the Mass Effect.
A lot of Mass Effect, a lot of Witcher.
Yeah.
The Danganronpa games would be there.
Yeah, they would.
And the rest is just the entirety of the Yakuza franchise.
Probably, yeah.
Good God.
Very good. All right, I've got a couple quickies. I've been in a bit of a video game malaise recently where I've got a bunch of upcoming travel coming up, and I'm having commitment issues, like sitting down to really dive into something in any kind of substantial way. So I've been just kind of grazing here and there on a couple different games, one of which is my old flame. I won't linger on this too long, Heath, so don't fall asleep. But I returned to Returnal.
Oh my God.
I'm playing more of Housemarque's big sci-fi roguelike action game. Third-person shooter with some horror vibes from 2021. I'm playing it on PC again.
You beat that. There's no corner you haven't seen.
I really did beat that dead horse. There were a few things for me to clean up in the endless mode. That was like the post-release update called Returnal Ascension, where you're ascending the Infinite Tower.
What's the title character of Returnal called?
Celine is her name.
Celine.
She's an astronaut, crash landed on this foreign hostile planet. And it's a very trippy psychological game. I was playing the DLC. It functions as the game's endless mode, like I said. And I had cleared it kind of before, but there was a secret ending I had not bothered to unlock. This was my justification to go and seek that out. Suffice to say, I've done it. I've seen all the hospital sequences.
Oh, thank goodness.
The endless mode specifically encourages a breakneck pace of play.
It's like Doom.
Yeah. In the endless mode, you clear an individual floor, and then you warp up to the next one. And you're never quite certain if the next floor will be another combat encounter or maybe a chance for you to like collect some power-ups and some extra resources as you catch your breath.
It's like Binding of Isaac.
What was neat for me to realize was the game grants you its currency.
Return bucks.
Yeah, they're called oblites, but return bucks works as well. Upon vanquishing the final foe on a floor, if you're able to nearly immediately hit the warp button and just zoom to the next place, you are granted like a currency bonus.
Wait, for not loitering?
For not loitering.
So if you're like Samantha bumping into invisible walls, it costs you return bucks.
Why would you linger? Like, what's the motivation to linger?
Just sightseeing.
You might have just like, okay, I'm in the corner of the room. I just happen to be in the corner when I vanquished the last enemy. And now I have to run to the center of the room to warp up.
I see. So you're motivated to finish the deed in the center.
Yep.
Okay.
It is encouraging more positional awareness of like, okay, how many enemies are exactly left? Let me make sure I knock them off while I'm in the center. There's more reasons to linger though, because enemies, as you're killing them, might drop new weapons or like a health upgrade. And you're now faced with the choice of, do I get out of dodge real quick, get some extra money, or do I spend the precious time to walk all the way over there and check to see if maybe that weapon is better than the one I'm holding? Things like that. You want to like loot the room in its entirety, or do you want to get out quick?
Who's the developer?
Housemarque.
Oh, yeah.
Their pedigree is in arcade games.
Yeah.
I liked that decision. I got much more into the warping out immediately. I had to be far more aware of like when I finished the room. It encouraged a really breathless pace where I would just like, all right, next room. There was far less chance of me to just mentally catch my breath. As far as just being dialed in all the time, as you get warped into the next room, it does it like a quick, you zoom through the environment before you actually spawn.
Like Mario Kart.
Like Mario Kart.
Dun,
You get that panoramic view.
But the same Locky 2 in the cloud appears in Returnal.
As my brain was buzzing of just going to room, I also thought it was interesting. You can strategically use that panoramic shot of the level you're about to face to scan the environment for namely two things. There will be these regenerative towers that until you take it out, all enemies are constantly regenerating health. So those are always priority number one. You want to know where those are. And there's also this rare enemy spawn. He's like this white tentacle guy. And if you take him out, he'll open a portal that you can enter and get some extra goodies. But they will often like flee the environment. So you have to be very judicious about tracking them down quickly. So yeah, I liked how those two things worked in tandem, where I'd be zooming through rooms as quick as possible, but also scanning them as fast as my brain could process.
Wow, yeah, you really needed to rush through this game before your travel plans cut that short.
Yep.
You couldn't have picked a better game that incentivizes you to just get through it.
It was as frenetic as my life is about to be.
Yeah.
And like I said, Housemarque, known for their arcade high score chasing pedigree of games they made in the past.
Yeah, Geometry Dash.
Geometry Wars. But
Did I nail it?
Oh no, wait. They didn't make Geometry Wars.
Yeah, I threw that on my ass.
They made Super Stardust. If you play like the game kind of wants you to and you're zooming through rooms, your score multiplier gets bigger and bigger. And I kind of got into the score chasing.
This is Devil May Cry now.
To the point where on my best run,
this is Guitar Hero.
I looked up where I fell in the global leaderboards. Oh. I am player number 8,759 out of 64,495. So that puts me in the top 13.6% of players.
Yeah, it does. It's 0.68. Yeah.
And those are my Returnal credentials.
Wow. Audio listener, I'm getting on my knees.
All right, that's really all I had to say about this pleasant return visit to Returnal. It was a lot of fun for me, and it just reinforced, man, I really like this game. I wonder what Housemarque is cooking up next. Because it's been 3 years now, no new announcements. Because, of course, they're a Sony first-party studio. Those guys apparently have all been muzzled because we don't know what they're working on.
Stardust 2.
Maybe. All right, that's enough of that. Let's throw it back over to you, Samantha.
All right.
You've been also playing a breakneck, fast-paced adrenaline game.
I was going to make a return pun.
Okay.
Because I returned to the Obra Dinn. Yeah. And I loved it. I'll explain the premise of the game, which is that you are, I guess, some sort of insurance person.
That's a game I bumped into Invisible Walls myself.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, if you're trying to like go above deck when you're not supposed to.
Oh, yeah. Like in a memory or something. Yeah. Sometimes it'll be weird.
Yeah.
You're an insurance person. Your task is you are given a magical book and compass, and you are investigating a ship. It has returned to port, but there's no one alive on it. Your magical compass, what it can do is if you see a dead body, you can click it, and then you can return to the scene of the crime and revisit the moment that person died.
It might not have been a crime. It might have just been natural seasick causes.
Oh, yes. It could have been any number of deaths.
Could have been white tentacle thing.
It could have been white tentacle thing. And the gameplay of this is there are 40-something people who were on the ship when it left port, and your task is to figure out the cause of death for each of the passengers, as well as identify their name and profession.
Were there exactly 60 people?
Yes.
Sure. Sorry, I don't remember.
Yeah. Say 60.
60.
Nice.
Say it again.
You can't make...
In Spanish.
It's not Setenta.
It's Sesenta.
Fuck.
And this is your second Lucas Pope game.
This is it?
Yeah.
Gosh, when does Martian After Midnight?
Because you told me while having COVID, played all of Papers, Please.
Oh, I didn't play Papers, Please. I was down really sick after getting the vaccine because I react really strongly to them. And I was just like in bed for a full day because I had like a massive fever.
That's funny. You deny immigrants based on their vaccination status in the game. It's the day 25 modifier.
So I didn't have the energy to play even a game as simple as Papers, Please. So I watched an entire playthrough with all the endings. I watched somebody else do it while I was down with a fever. And that's what I did the whole day. And then I passed out and I woke up and I was fine. Anyway, unrelated. I think Return of the Obra Dinn, it was an excellent time. I wish there were more of these games where you're thrown into a really difficult mystery to solve. You're given so little information to go off. Every time you heard a character refer to another person by their name, it was like a gift.
You're like, hallelujah.
Sometimes the cause of death for people, because the way the graphics are in this game, I feel like is a deliberate choice to be a little unclear. Determining the cause of death sometimes was even difficult, even though you are there witnessing what happened to them.
Rumor has it the visual style made friend of the show Janice rage quit the game.
I could understand that. I think it took me a couple minutes to get acclimated to like looking at the environment.
Hey, how much did you cheat?
I cheated not at all.
Wow. What?
I took.
How long did this take?
I don't have my exact Steam time.
Here's where you flex on me, though, Samantha, since you were several hours faster than me.
I was several hours faster. So invisible walls might get me down, but Chris took his time playing Return of the Obra Dinn.
When did you nail the doctor?
Oh my God. He was the last thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I was texting Chris because I was so irritated. I was like, there are no clues for this. How the heck am I meant to solve this?
Yeah.
I was so pissed. And then
just going below deck, above deck, looking everywhere.
I knew where he had appeared, and I was like, I know what happened to him. I know where he went.
They're slashing around and he's right at the edge.
I knew what his fate was, but I was like, how am I meant to determine like this descriptor of the fate? Well, that's as vague as possible.
Yeah.
And I was like so pissed about it. And so I guess if we consider this cheating, I did cheat, where I just checked every possible, because I was like
brute force.
And then immediately after, so that was my last solve. Immediately after I brute forced it, I saw how I was meant to solve it. And it was heartbreaking because I was like, oh crap. That is how you're meant to do it.
You're fine.
So that was the hardest one.
Him and the three others.
Yeah, because it's the four of them share the same fate. I mean, their identities were so easy to figure out. It was frustrating that their fates were the difficult part, because usually that's the easy part. Anyways, would I recommend the game? Absolutely. I thought it was a great time. I agree with Heath. Die before you cheat. Takes away how good you feel about playing the game. Yes, there were times when I was really frustrated and got super stuck, but then I would have big revelations and they really pulled me through.
How about all those fates?
How
like
about
expired?
Oh yeah,
gourd.
I couldn't figure out what expired meant until I plugged it in for someone, and then I was like, oh, it just means like died of old age.
It was like the old. Yeah, I mean, well, he got messed up, but then he sat in a chair for long enough.
Yeah. I was like, he expired, and then it was like no, and I was like, okay, so he died because that thing.
Yeah. Imagine like eating like a raw egg and then living for 10 days and then dying, and it's, according to Obra Dinn, you died of egg.
It's like, okay,
be like, no, I just died or whatever.
Here's what my worst time figuring out cause of death. I had two. One of them was like someone was visibly shot by a cannon.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm talking about.
You first go down,
and then his cause of death isn't shot by a cannon, and I'm like, what am I looking at here? It's explosion, and I'm like, okay, whatever, Obra Dinn. That's the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the other one is their visual for fire did not click for me forever. I was like, he has a big light on him.
It's really decorative.
Yeah, I couldn't identify what fire was, and then eventually I was like, wait a minute, it's probably not goo. It's probably a fire. And then it was. So, yeah. I loved the game. Any thoughts on it?
I agree with everything you said. Lucas Pope needs to make more games. I wish there was an endless mode.
Endless fates to solve.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would be amazing though.
I mean, that's kind of the pitch of something like Shadows of Doubt, right? A procedurally generated perpetual mystery machine.
Don't talk about Shadows of Doubt.
I hear it's coming to consoles
It's coming
soon,
to consoles soon.
and it's exiting early access.
It's going to feel like early access for eternity.
Really? You seem so down on it.
It's just, you've never felt the lack of voice acting harder. Like Disco Elysium, you could turn the sound off, which would actually be beneficial because the overworld music is drowning it. I prefer to jack out the Disco Elysium score in voice work and plug it into Shadows of Doubt where it needs it most.
I see.
Because every Roblox you come across is the same.
Okay.
Also, the combat is hard.
I didn't even realize Shadows of Doubt had combat.
Yeah, you got handcuffs, you got fists, you got guns, you got knives, you got stuff.
Interesting. That's a game I intend to check out someday.
Yeah.
But no, I was super glad you loved Return of the Obra Dinn, Samantha. It's a stone cold classic at this point. Great game.
Great game. Yeah. Would recommend. Lucas Pope needs to get to work.
I can't even. I've thought about buying a Playdate so many times.
Do you know the pitch of Lucas Pope's latest game, Martians After Midnight?
Yeah, you're like a self-help person for these Martians.
Oh,
aren't you?
I haven't looked into it.
They come to like your food truck, and then you deal with their problems.
And it's controlled all via that sweet crank gameplay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Don't talk about that either.
All right, I have one game to end on, talking about the most random shit I could be playing. This is just a symptom of the mood I'm in, where I'm floating from game to game, listless and apathetic. I returned to Middle-earth: Shadow of War.
Weird. Okay.
To play some of its lingering story DLCs I never touched.
These orcs are like, I've hunted you for 5 years. And I'm like, that's how long it's been since I played this game.
Yeah, very much true, Heath. So I talked about Shadow of War 5 years ago on this podcast.
What the hell is his name?
It's episode 15, Back to Thrak.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Did Thrak come back?
And I highly recommended it. It was great. Nemesis system taken to its pinnacle, it seemed. But I returned for the DLCs, and boy, what a whimper these are.
Oh.
I completed the first one called The Blade of Galadriel, where you play as a new character, not Talion this time. You play as this elf woman. It was one of the most incoherent story structures I've ever come across.
Oh, really?
There was no concept of setup and payoff whatsoever. It was wild. So you're dumped in this new character. First of all, the concept of this DLC was ill-founded from the start, because the whole crux of this game is you have this dynamically generated cast of characters personalized for your game.
Like a hierarchy.
An orc hierarchy. And you are going to be forming rivalries with them, manipulating them, setting up grudges between certain members, recruiting some to be your bodyguard.
Romancing some.
What?
The various relationships you can have with this lovable cast of uniquely tailored characters is commendable. So many different ways to interact with the system. It's very verbose. But as you're not playing as Talion anymore, who has all these wraith powers, namely, a huge tool in your tool set is being able to dominate an orc. Convert them to your side, basically brainwash them so that they can do your bidding. You can set up double agents, things like that. Galadriel, who you play as in this DLC, cannot dominate orcs, meaning a massive lever you can pull for like manipulating the orc hierarchy is just absent in this DLC.
Oh my God. It's like if Joker couldn't interrogate.
Your most high leverage tool for making the Nemesis system compelling is just gone. So from minute one, this was a poorly conceived piece of content. But then as you go deeper and you like play through the linear set of missions to get to the credits, it was just whiplash back and forth. I have to assume the dev team was given a paltry budget to like make this totally frivolous piece of content and just sell it for a premium after the fact to whoever bought the season pass or whatever. Here was the string of missions I played in my final play session. I was given this loose objective to find some more allies. So I found this pair of like twin brother orcs named like Flint and Timber or something. They had a hard-on for explosives. So you did this like explosion mission with them, and they were your pals. Cool. And then you go from this low stakes kind of comic relief mission to instantly you're like, okay, it's the final thing. You're going to siege this fort and like take it over to push back the darkness or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just tonal whiplash from like goofy explosion mission to, okay, it's like the final boss of this area. Go do it. All right, we've liberated this area. Let's go take the fight to a different front.
Yeah.
You go to this more of a desert area. And there's, as soon as you arrive, there's no buildup or anything. The only mission available is liberate the final fort, whatever. There's no buildup or anything. You go do that. Cool. And then you go to the third and final region because of rule of threes.
Ice.
And it might have been the ice place.
Poison swamp.
There was an ice place at one point.
Okay.
You could do another like loyalty mission. The mission was called the Digger. And you like walk over to this cave entrance. And this quirky orc who like burrows comes up out of the earth. And he's like, oh, oi, it's too noisy around here. Because the architect orc you met a couple missions earlier, he's like building too many towers. You need to ally with me and take down your friend, the architect.
Okay.
And then your architect pal shows up because like this is the conflict of this mission, I guess.
Oh,
the
and you have to
rival.
choose between them Mass Effect style.
You choose between these two orcs Mass Effect style. One who you met moments ago and have no connection to. And then the other one you have some tangential relationship to.
Okay, so it's like Samara and Morinth.
Right, except there's zero stakes. I care about these two not at all. One of them has had moderately more lines of dialogue, so I guess I side with him. And it was just the most milquetoast non-choice ever. It was like the weakest build your party subplot of like recruit these orcs. And then you go to the final mission and the stakes, they try to raise the stakes because there's like, ooh, more orcs on the field than ever before.
Whoa.
And there's like this scripted moment where one of your followers is taken hostage.
No.
And it's one of the explosive
Not
brothers.
Digger. Oh, okay.
And he's like, you'll never take me alive. And he blows up his captor. And I'm like, oh no, I wish I cared. And then I just keep on, go to the credits and fight the Nazgul bosses. It was wild how little care and attention were put into this content.
It's because they were too busy making the Harry Potter game.
Oh, it is owned by the Warner Brothers studio, but
Yeah.
I think it is a different studio working on
Those
it.
Hogwarts dollars.
This is made by Monolith, who is allegedly working on a Wonder Woman game.
Okay.
That was announced years ago, and we haven't heard a peep since, so maybe some red flags there. After that rousing success, The Blade of Galadriel, I dipped a little bit into the second piece of DLC, which I have to say seems a little bit more interesting conceptually. It's called The Desolation of Mordor. You're playing as a mortal this time.
Can you dominate orcs?
I don't think so. But this piece of content has some light permadeath to it. It's like, oh, you're playing as a mortal. If you die, all of your currency is wiped. The orc hierarchy, you're trying to like, instead of dominating, you're recruiting these mercenaries and having them infiltrate the orc hierarchy. But if you die, all that infiltration work you've done will be reset.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, okay, some stakes, the likes of which this series has not seen before. Interesting. I wasn't too concerned. This game series as a whole has been notoriously easy for me. Not a lot of fail states or deaths I've encountered, which was ironically hilarious when I went into this DLC. I do story mission 1. I get to the very end. I've blown up 14 out of 15 barrels. And then I die because in this desert location, there are sandworms and one emerges from the ground to get me.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it happen before. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I didn't realize there was going to be a quick time event that I botched badly and got an instant death. And then I was booted to the beginning of this DLC. And I was like, that's enough Shadow of War for today. And I haven't gone back. So that was my incredibly lackluster time
That was desolate.
playing the DLCs to Shadow of War that I have never heard a single soul ever mention. And now I have some insight into why. And that's everything I've been playing.
Such journalistic integrity, Chris. Thank you for your service.
Oh yeah, so if I don't talk about these DLCs, who will?
No one will, yeah.
And I think we hit everything you've been playing, Samantha.
Yeah, I'll hint that I've dove into Prey a little bit, but I'm not done, so I won't say anything.
You're like, wow, this apartment's great.
Cool. So that's everything we've been playing. It's been a weird smorgasbord of games. We'll take a break and come back
your legs.
with our closing segments. Well, we're back, and we don't have too much conversation topics queued up, so we thought we'd just take the opportunity and play video game 20 questions.
All right. Once again, I have provided the game.
Oh, good. All right. The boys are back.
The boys are back.
I feel like I would be the worst guesser. And I have a backup game in case this one is too easy.
Oh, no. We'll be struggling.
Speak for yourself. We're going to get it in 10.
Heath and I will be collaborating.
10 is par.
I don't know about that.
Heath, if you get it in 10, I'll give you big ups.
If I don't get it in 10, you're the first voice on the next episode.
Okay.
You shout, Chris.
Oh man. I don't know if I can do that.
As Heath and I will attempt to guess Samantha's game.
No peeking.
So with that, Heath, would you like
No, I
to
don't want to go first. No.
Oh, okay.
No. I'll just clean up whatever you do.
Sweet. Samantha, did this game release in the
Question
year?
111.
Yeah. Who wants to be responsible for keeping track?
I can keep track since
Thanks,
I'm just
Sam.
answering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Samantha, did this game release in the year 2006 or later?
No.
Pre-2006.
Oh, good. Okay.
I chose 2006 as the year that like the PS3 and the Wii came out.
Okay.
So that eliminates like that generation going forward.
Okay. All right. Question 2. Samantha, can I play this game on my Nintendo 64?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Question 3. Samantha, is this game exclusive to one platform or is it on multiples? Or not? Can't I ask an or question? Is this game exclusive to a single platform?
No.
Okay. Multi-platform release. So that would eliminate things like a Mario game.
Heath, are you Googling?
No, I'm looking at every game ever is flashing before my eyes. Question 4. Sam, is this a platformer, racer, or puzzle game?
No.
It's none of those.
Platformer, racer, or puzzle? I'm going to write that down.
Are you cheating?
No, just it's hard to remember.
He's looking at his OnlyFans.
I took those photos.
On to question 5.
Uh-huh.
Samantha, is this game based on a licensed property?
Like it's based on an IP? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like outside of games.
No.
Okay.
Question 6. Samantha, does your inventory hold more than 2 things?
Yes.
I'm trying to rule out like Halo, like where you have like a grenade.
Your inventory holds more than 2 things. That also gives us confirmation that you indeed have an inventory.
Yeah, that was my plan.
All right, my next question. I want to narrow down the time period a little bit more.
It's question 7.
Question 7. Samantha, did this game release in 1996 or later?
Yes.
Okay, so that narrows it down to a decade.
It's old as dirt.
It's 1996 or later, but before 2006.
Oh.
So that would be things like the PlayStation 1, the N64.
But not the N64.
It's also the PS2 and the GameCube and the original Xbox. The Dreamcast, if Samantha's feeling funky.
Samantha, does this game have a ball? Do you play with a ball? This is question 8.
Possibly.
Classic yes or no response. Possibly.
I would need to check. It's definitely possible.
It's not FIFA.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that does eliminate some sports games because the answer would be clear cut.
Also, you don't have an inventory. Or you do. Hell, you have the biggest inventory. This could be Resident Evil.
Samantha, is this game known for including multiplayer modes?
No.
Okay.
This could be Resident Evil.
Single player game.
Well, yeah, every game in 1996
No,
between
there was
2006 was
Lots of local co-op.
single player.
World of Warcraft came out in that time period.
It could be World of Warcraft.
Could it? No, because she said it's not exclusive to a single platform, and that's only on PC.
Oh, okay.
And isn't World of Warcraft known for its multiplayer?
Also known for its massively multiplayer.
And this is single player only? What is this?
She said it's not known for multiplayer modes. So it's a single player game.
I've only played World of Warcraft for like an hour one time when I was like 12, so I don't know much about it.
That's more than me.
This could be RuneScape.
No, it can't. It's single player.
Okay, question 10.
I would be in favor of another genre question, kind of like how you did puzzle platform racer.
Fine, I'll do it again. Is this a shooter strategy? Is this a shooter strategy
Or
or sports game? Is this a shooter strategy or sports game?
No.
It's none of those.
Okay.
It's Dr. Kawashima's train your brain every day.
This is question 11. Did this game release on a handheld system?
No.
Okay.
Question 12.
Home console.
Chris, we ran out of genres.
We're out.
Dancing games,
Let's see.
visual novels.
We could say horror.
Yeah.
Oh, there's RPG.
JRPG.
That'll be included.
I'm joking.
Let's do RPG, horror, action, and fighting games.
I'll let you do that.
Okay.
Question 12. Does how my character dress affect their defense stats?
No.
No.
That
Dude, it's a visual novel. It's like, it's The Sims.
I mean, The Sims and visual novels are two very different things.
Dress up. This is fashion.
Here comes my question. Samantha,
And it's 13.
is this a horror game, a simulation game, or an action game or fighting game?
Yes.
All right, it's one of those. Simulation, horror, action, or fighting. Should we just burn a question narrowing it down to two of them?
Name a simulation game from this era. System Shock?
The Sims, Sim City, Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Do you have an inventory in that game?
I don't know. Wait, fighting games don't have inventories, so we can probably eliminate that.
Anyways, question 14, Heath.
Games that girls play. Nintendogs. Not on a handheld.
Not on a handheld.
I need PlayStation games to come to me.
That's too bad. I liked Nintendogs.
Don't let that influence your opinion, Chris. Samantha, is the game setting in a rural area?
No.
What were you thinking?
Nintendogs.
What?
Isn't Nintendogs not set in like a suburb?
Also, Nintendogs is eliminated. It's a handheld game.
Not rural.
You don't have a setting in Nintendogs.
Question 15.
All right, Samantha. Was this game made by a Japanese developer?
Of course it was.
No.
Ay.
Not Japanese developed. That means it's not Resident Evil. It's not Silent Hill.
Question 16 to Heath.
Okay, what do we do? Do we have to narrow down the year more?
It might be a simulation game.
But what simulation games are from that period aside from
All the ones I mentioned?
Sims, Second Life?
We're in a little bit of hot water here, Heath.
I know, I feel it.
I was so worried you guys were going to stomp me.
Trust me. Early 2000s simulation games.
Well, maybe we should find out what the genre actually is.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so if you were to do that, you would say, hey, Samantha.
Is this a simulation game?
Hey, Samantha. Question 15.
16.
16? Aw.
Your even number questions.
Is this a simulation game?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Okay. So it could be one of the Sims games.
Yeah.
It could be
Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Right.
Zoo Tycoon.
Okay.
Not Zoo Tycoon. There's definitely balls in there. You probably throw a ball at a seal and it goes,
Do you have an inventory in The Sims?
your furniture, but that doesn't really count.
This is a area of games I have very little hands-on
You
experience
buy the
with.
furniture straight from the stock, and then like your inventory is never greater than 1. That's why I said 2. You just airlift it into the thing.
I would disagree.
Definitely no inventory in The Sims. All right. It holds more than two.
Whose turn is it to ask a question?
It's Chris's
my
turn. It's question 17.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
we've got 17,
left.
18, and 19.
Then we have to guess
and
the
then we
game.
have to guess the game. How do I differentiate
from
between
The Sims?
How do I narrow it down between the Sims and then like the more city building ones?
Whether or not you can make whoopee.
What is a whoopee?
That's what The Sims calls having intercourse.
Okay,
It's
Samantha.
called WooHooing.
Or whatever. What am I trying to think of?
Samantha, as an action in this game, can I cause woo-hooing to happen?
Yeah, so I've never heard it referred in like that grammatical sense, Grandpa.
Sometimes every sentence needs to be uttered for the first time once. All right.
18.
All right. Okay. We're circling the drain.
We just need to make sure we don't stumble and say the wrong
Well,
Sims
she
game.
played Sims 3.
When did that come out?
Like when she was a kid.
My gut says The Sims 1 came out in 2000.
She's not going to pick The Sims 1.
Why don't you ask if this is like the first game in its series?
It's question 18. Is this the debut entry in its franchise?
Yes.
Oh.
Hey.
All right.
Should I? I'm going to do it.
Phew.
Samantha, is the game The Sims?
Yes.
We did it with 2 questions to spare.
Check the clock. When did I first say Sims?
You said it, I want to say around question 11.
Oh.
Around par, according to Heath.
But it was past par.
It was past par.
There's definitely a ball in The Sims.
Okay. I wasn't sure if in the first Sims there was, because Sims 3 is a much bigger game than Sims 2, which I have also played.
Puts hand on hip.
her Sims clout.
I've poured too many hours into The Sims to hear Chris go, how would I differentiate it between it and Sim City? Like, Chris, those are so different games.
I was going to be like, hey, do you construct buildings in this game? But
Yes, you can in The Sims.
Right, so that wouldn't have narrowed it down.
Do you control a person?
You control an individual person?
In The
I thought you were
Sims.
just like the God's eye view watching them do whatever.
No, you in modern day Sims 4, you like run a house, you can build it, and then you have like your little guys and you make them go do stuff. But it's only like a household amount at a time, so it's like maybe like I think 8 people is the max. It's usually just 1 or 2.
Hey, what's the country of origin?
A studio who developed it was American.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was surprised to me.
What would you have guessed?
Japanese.
This seems Segoy to you?
I just didn't think Americans were that capable.
Would have been more talking cats. Yeah, you're right. Chris makes an excellent point. Undefeated.
Well done, Heath.
Nice job.
The
people.
only issue I took was the rural question.
Yeah. Well, it ruled out Sim City.
Yeah, I guess
So
it does.
did the release date.
Very cool. Great selection, Samantha.
A nail biter.
It was well balanced for challenge.
I was worried because it's like one of the best-selling games of like all time.
Yes.
So I was like, it's definitely something you know of. It's whether the idea of a simulation game was too out there.
It wasn't top of mind, which is why it took us so long.
Also, I love the Sims series. I think it's a lot of fun, and you guys will never play
How
it.
many hours have you done it?
I don't want to say.
Oh my God. How many generations have you done it?
Probably maxed out at like 3 because I like doing individual stories. I don't like staying with the same family. It's boring.
Yeah.
Well, that's about going to do it for this episode of Mobius Tubes. If you have listener inquiries, you can send them to us at mobiustubespodcast@gmail.com.
That's Mobius Tubes. Mobius Tubes podcast@gmail.com.
We'll read every single one. I'll catch you guys in a while.
Please, 11-bit studios, send me Frostpunk 2. By the time we record next, it'll be the month. It'll be Frost month. I need it. I've been saving myself for you.
Oh my.
Heath's dying for it, so please do him a solid.
Just douse me in oil.
And we'll return with all those thoughts and more. See you then.